All right, guys, I want to talk about a bunch of things in Microsoft Word. This is an introduction to some very fundamental things in Microsoft Word. So let's start off with a bunch of things that we really need to take care about when we are looking into Microsoft Word. The very first thing that we talk about is the page orientations. We see a bunch of tabs up there in Microsoft Word. We head down to the layout tab, and that's where we see the page orientation. Notice we could always choose either of these two orientations depending on what we need, right? So you could choose a landscape orientation. You zoom out a little bit and you see this is a landscape orientation. You could always choose a portrait orientation. So there are two orientations that you can always choose from. The other thing that we can also take into account is margins of the page, right? And they're also in the layout. So it makes sense when you're looking for a document that you set up the structure of the document first. So having looking into page margins, we have this option in layout, and there are a bunch of page margins available to us. What do they really do? As the name suggests, they set up the margin of the page, right? So by default, there's a normal margin, which is 1 inch on either side, on all four sides of the page. What we could also do is set up a narrow page margin. Notice when I change this page margin, the ruler seems to change up also. Okay, so I'll leave this to a normal page margin, but this is something you can set up here in the layout tab. The next thing that we could look up in layout here is also the page size. Now there are a bunch of page sizes options that are available to you. We use them as per our requirement. Typically we go with the US letter. Notice this is an 8.5 inch by an 11 inch, right? US legal is also very famous page size. A4 is a well known page size also, and these are something that we typically use for our documents. The next thing that we might also want to look into is the number of columns, right? So if you look into the number of columns, this option is also here in layouts, and you could have these columns, 1 or 2 columns. Notice as I chose 2 columns, the ruler divided my page into two uh, halves, right? So if I write anything around here, it will come up into two separate columns. So by choosing this, I could have not just two but three or as many columns as I need. There's an option for more columns. Typically we set it to 1 column. Now, as we've seen in most of these applications, also in most of these options, also that the ruler kind of adjusts. If you see in columns, the ruler adjusts. So the ruler is always here, and we could see where it is set up at. Notice you could also go to view, and in view you can turn the ruler on if it's off by default, but you can always toggle this up, right? So you always have an option to switch on or off the ruler. So I have the ruler turned on. I'll go back to the layout mode, get back to 1 column, and then I want to talk about headers, right? So where are the headers? Notice I could always go to insert, I could go to home, I could go to draw, and there are a bunch of things set up here. But if I go to insert tab, I will see the header and footer set out here. There's an option for this. If I click on header, it lets me choose different types. I want to go with a simple blank one, right? So as you do this, one of the things that you set up is you can set up anything. For example, I could set up my name in the header, Salar Khan, and what that really does is it sets up a header. Now this is part of the header. The good thing about headers is it will always be in every single page, right? I go to the next page, I see the header there by default. So uh, and the same is true for footers also, right? You could always go to the footers, and that will be it. The same idea for footers. I'll choose a blank footer, and I will probably put up a number 1 2 3 4 5 6, right? And then double click to the center of the page, and the footer is set up over there. And this also is showing up on every single page, right? So that's about it. There's one more thing, page numbers. And if we go to insert, we have a bunch of things here, but what I'm really looking for is page numbers. There it is. Insert, header and footer, and there you see page numbers, right? So you choose the page number option, and it lets you choose where you want to position the page number, right? To the bottom of the page, align it to the right, and you can actually see this here, right, on the bottom right corner. And you also have an option for show number on first page. Sometimes when you're making a report, you don't want the page number on the title page. in that case you might want to turn this off, right? Because title pages don't have page numbers. But if you don't have a title page and you're just making a single page or a 2-page report or something, you might as well want to have a page number there. You hit OK, and there it is. You see the page number. It's page number 1, and then it increments to page number